Hi. So I'm going to discuss my own personal learning learning philosophy, I'm sorry. Um, so throughout this class, my approach to education has definitely shifted from a more emphasis on teaching and how to be a good teacher to a more central focus on the student's actual learning. Um, I think that it's a very holistic realization that the two are inseparable aspects of one big whole. I would define teaching and learning much like having a conversation. Both people have to communicate in it for it to work. If I'm just talking and you're not answering me, it's just a little awkward. There has to be co-creation between the student and the teacher. And in order to accomplish this, I think there's a few basic things. There has to be conversations in the classroom about giving knowledge and facilitating understanding. Be helping and challenging, so you may challenge a student, but you're going to help him get to that end goal. I think you have to maintain rigor and encourage creative experimentation, and respect and support a wide diversity of students and students' needs for assessment and learning, while maintaining balance and fairness. You have to promote positive learning to spark learner enthusiasm for learning and provide a strong foundation for lifelong learning, which I think might be just one of the most important parts of my whole philosophy, to really make a base for lifelong learning. So kind of like Emerson, I believe that learning requires deep understanding that can only come when students internalize and actively apply knowledge in creative and meaningful ways. In any class, I hope that the students will be able to wrestle with the course material with their own daily lives, to apply these abstract theories, like in an elementary school classroom, let's just say that 2 plus 2 equals 4. That's an abstract idea. So maybe give them 2 apples over here and 2 apples over here, and then tell me how many apples there are. Because they understand that. They understand that there's 4 in front of them. They just weren't quite sure how you got that. Ideally, this approach would empower students to really articulate their ideas and process concepts in a way that's more meaningful to them, which helps them to learn. The next theory I'm going to talk about is constructivism. So constructivism really says that students' ability to take the knowledge and information that is presented to them and apply it to the information they already have in a collaborative way to gain their own understanding. What really stands out to me in this theory is to gain their own understanding. I think it's very important that students are taking the driver's seat in their learning. If a teacher's just spitting out facts to students, like I said before, 2 plus 2 equals 4, they're not going to remember it or fully understand it. They don't know. They might know because you've told them that 5 minus 2 equals 3, but they have no clue why 5 minus 2 equals 3. It's important to also put lessons into their schema. So the constructivism theory believes that there's schemas in which people divide things. So it's important to draw on previous lessons in your current lesson. So relate similarities and differences so the student can understand the new topic along with the old. I can definitely relate to this in like my calculus class, let's just say. We'll be learning about one thing and I might kind of understand it while we're learning about it, but maybe not fully grasp it. And then we'll move on to the next topic, which may kind of relate back to the last one. It's kind of growing on the last topic, and that helps me to fully understand the last topic we learned so much better than I originally did. So also in constructivism, group work is very important. Group work really gives a student the opportunity to discuss maybe something they didn't fully understand in a lecture with other students in the class that maybe understand it. It's putting your lesson into a different voice. Just maybe the way you personally said it didn't really connect with the student, but what this other student says might. And let's say they all understand it, they'll be able to grow on their ideas because no two people think exactly the same way. So it's really helpful just to discuss. Another theory that really relates to my teaching philosophy is the information processing. It basically says that in order for learning to take place, there first has to be attention, which is especially true in diverse classrooms and for classrooms with children with learning disabilities. So there has to be engaging information for all students that all students can understand. And if there is not attention, then it won't work into their working memory and then their long-term memory, which is necessary for learning. You have to be able to remember something to fully learn it and understand it. So it might be kind of hard to grasp some students' attention, but I think you have to do this through really changing up the lesson. So never just standing and lecturing for a really long time, maybe standing and lecturing for a few minutes and then putting them into groups, doing a bunch of different things so the student really stays focused. So this, I think, is one of the most important things in a classroom, and it's a really important tool for a kid to have. So next, I'm going to talk about Vygotsky. So he basically talks about the cognitive social development theory and how in the proximal development stage, he talks about parents, but I'm going to move it on over to teachers, really pull their students up and provide them with the tools necessary to advance their knowledge. So you have to teach, especially at the elementary school teacher level. I'm going to go back to that a lot because I'm very interested in elementary school. I think that's when a lot of this growing really takes place and gets started. So you need to give your students all the tools you know, and then they could pick what the best way for them to learn is. So next, I am going to talk about metacognition, and that is the student's ability to think about their learning, to really grasp how they learn, understand. They have to internalize the learning. They have to know how they learn for the learning to really take place. So they need to learn the best way for them to study, the best way for them to take notes, the best way for them to read a book or do a math problem. Because of this, it's very important, and once again, especially the lower levels, to present them with every single way on how to do something. So this really makes me think of learning multiplication when we were younger. I remember they taught us so many different ways to do it, and then you kind of got to pick which one worked the best for you. And I've probably used the way that works the best for me till this day. Probably used it today in class. So this really focuses on the internal aspects of learning and how students are responsible for their learning. And as a teacher, it's just your job to advance their learning in the best possible way. So I believe in my philosophy that the best possible way is just to gear them in the right direction and let them really take hold of their learning. So motivation, along with this, is also huge in the classroom. So it might be kind of hard to get every once in a while, but there are two forms, extrinsic and intrinsic. So extrinsic is more you are motivated by maybe your parents are really happy with you if you get a good grade and they give you some sort of gift, or the teacher puts a really cool sticker on your test if you get a good grade, I don't know. And intrinsic is you're really motivated by yourself. You want to do well on that test for yourself because you studied hard and you want to do well on that test. Extrinsic might work for some people in the short term, but intrinsic is really more long term, and that's what students need. It goes past schooling, it goes into your work, it goes into everything. There has to be that internal drive, or learning really will never occur. So Dweck's self-increment theory is important, and teachers can foster this through using constructive criticism and positive feedback. So when you're giving an assignment back, it is very important to comment on it. Don't just write A++ or F on it. You have to say why. Why does that student deserve the A++, and why does that student deserve the F? Even if the student you're giving an F, you have to tell them, don't say this is the worst paper I've ever read. You should say, you did this and that was good, but maybe you could grow on it by doing this. There has to be definitely positive and negative in your feedback, or a student will just give up. Actually, I'm going to tell a little short story about that before I move on. I had a language arts teacher in middle school who would just do that. She would just write everything you did wrong. You could get an A on it, and she would point out everything you did wrong. And this might sound silly, but it really turned me away from language arts. I hate English, and I hate all of that just because I feel like I'm always doing something wrong in it. And it really turns a student away. So next I'm going to move on to the attribution theory, and it's really that students can either think that their learning is internal or external. Internal is that they understand that they got a bad grade because they didn't study. Didn't study for that test, so I don't deserve a good grade, to be honest. Or I studied really hard, so that good grade is all me. And external is more so, they say, oh, I had a bad teacher, like, oh, that test was way too hard, we didn't learn that stuff. And they really have to internalize this. So it's very important that students understand that it's their fault they didn't do well, or it's good job, you studied hard and you did well. That's on you, not on an easy test. It's really important for them to take responsibility for their own learning. So I really think it's important to provide a learning environment that is both exciting and rigorous. It can empower the student in pursuing and learning. I think that various assessment strategies allow to fairly assess students' learning regardless of the student's learning style. And above all, I think you just need to treat your students with respect in the classroom, and they will respect you. And you have to create an environment where students feel safe, that they can discuss any topic that they may be a little hesitant to address, but you make them comfortable enough to address it. Okay.